This is the calculator that you are allowed to use on the HSE test. It's a TI-30XS, just means that it's made by Texas Instruments, and there are a lot of cool things that you can do on this calculator. So this video, I'm just going to walk you through some of the most basic functions. There's a lot more that you can do that I'm not going to show you because you probably won't need it for the test. But what I am going to show you are definitely going to be time savers, and as you get more comfortable with using the calculator, you're going to notice even more places that you can use it. So again, Texas Instrument TI-30XS for our HSE test, and here we go. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just very basic. It's how to turn the calculator on and off. So if you look down here, the far left-hand side, there's the on button, and you're going to get that blinking cursor and just do your math in it. And then when you're done, it will automatically turn off. But if for some reason you feel like you want to go ahead and turn it off sooner, you just press the second button and that on key again, and that turns it off. So this is a good time to talk about that second button. If you notice, our main writing on each of the keys is in white, but above each of those keys, there is lettering that's in green. So whenever we want to access the function that's written in green, like in this case, the off, you just press the second key first, and then you press the off. Let me show you something. When you press the second key, it will show up right there on your screen that you've got a second key going. And then you just press whatever button you want that corresponds to those green letters. So that second key, you can also think of it as just shifting keyboards, changing from one set, the white letters, to the other set, the green letters. So sometimes you get a hold of one of the school calculators and you can very evidently tell that somebody else has been working on it before you got to it. There's already numbers on the screen. You want to get back to a blank screen, so you can always press this clear button, but sometimes you might have to press it more than once to get all the way back to a completely blank screen. If you want to do it in one fell swoop, you press the second key and then the 0 key, and that's going to ask you, do you really want to reset? You press 2 for yes, and then memory cleared, it's all gone. So then you press that clear and you're ready to go putting in your calculations. So that's clearing the data, clearing the memory out of the calculator. But let's say you're working on something and you want to fix a mistake. Let's say you're doing 2/5 minus 4/10. But then before you hit enter, you realize, oh, I didn't want 2/5, I wanted 1/5 minus 4/10. And so all you have to do is use those right arrow keys, and it's going to take you back to your fraction. And then all you have to do is just press delete, and it's gone. And you can put the number in that you want, and then you just press enter, and there's your answer. Now, another thing that you can do, let's say that you're doing something like 15.5 divided by 9 minus 4. But you realize, oh wait, I'm supposed to do that 9 minus 4 first. I need to have parentheses. Well, it's easy to put that in parentheses in because your cursor's right there. But you can also go back to where you want to put something in. And if you press the second key and then the delete key, because remember we're doing an insert, you can put it in right there, and then just bring your cursor all the way back to the end and press enter, and there you have it. You can also do, let's say you've got 98.756 and you realize that one of those numbers is wrong, you can just go and delete that number and just write over what you want it to say. So that delete button will help you write over things. The second key and the delete button will help you insert something new without writing over something. And then, of course, using the second and the reset will clear everything. so that it can be back to a completely blank screen if you've got a lot of stuff in there. Now remember, you don't have to clear every single math problem. If we are doing some math and anytime I put in a new math problem, it just works with the line that I put in. And so you don't have to clear it every time. You can if it's confusing to you and you want to see a blank screen, but the computer doesn't need you to. The calculator doesn't need you to. So it's totally up to you if you want to clear after every problem or if you just want to keep it going so that you can keep pace and not lose time. It's up to you. So let's say you prefer math print, but you get into the test and all of a sudden you're trying to do a fraction and you realize, wait, this doesn't look like the fractions that I know and love. This isn't what I want. Well, all you have to do then is go into the mode. So you click the mode button and you see all the different lines, and math print is what we want. So you're going to go down to the last line using that down arrow. Then you're going to go to the right so that math print is blinking. After you press enter, classic is going to stop being highlighted and math print's going to be the only thing highlighted on that line. And so once you're there, press clear and you're back in the mode that you want. So you can try it again, that or that. And it is the format that we know and love. So you can always check your mode with your calculator if you're not getting the answer you feel like you should have. Another thing that this calculator can do is help you see things in different modes. For instance, if we press that mode key, there's all sorts of options. Now, I like to keep the first 3 lines on the left and then the last line on math print. The reason that I like this is if I'm putting something in, say like a fraction, it's going to look like a fraction. So if I do 58 fraction key 100, it looks like a fraction. I can see the numerator, I can see the denominator, but being in math print also means that I need to use these side cursor buttons to go ahead and get out of a fraction sometimes or out of an exponent. And so this is math print, and that's what I prefer to use. But another way that you can use, another mode you can use, is classic. And the nice thing about classic is that you don't have to worry about using these side toggle buttons. So if I do 58 fraction key 100, there's no getting out of the fraction. It's just ready to do whatever I want to do next. The calculator knows that that 100 is the denominator. So it doesn't look like a fraction, but I also don't have to worry about getting out of a fraction. It's the same thing with exponents. If I do 3 to the 4th power like this, that 4 doesn't look like an exponent, but I just know because I've read the calculator long enough that that's what it is. Now, if I go back and I put it in math print mode, and I try it again, 3 to the 4th power, now that 4 very clearly is an exponent. But again, to continue doing math with it, I have to use that right arrow key to get out of the exponents. So math print makes the numbers look like what they are. So it's easier to see if something's a fraction or if something's an exponent, but you just have to use these cursor buttons to make sure that when you're ready to go on with the rest of the problem, your cursor's big and complete and it's not still up as an exponent or inside the fraction. If we want to do a fraction, there are 2 different kinds of fractions. The first one's just a simple fraction where you have a numerator and a denominator, and that's going to be this key right here. So let's say we want to do 2/5 divided by 4/9. So you put the numerator in first, 2, then you press the fraction key, and then you press the denominator. But see how the cursor is still tiny below the fraction line, it's still in the denominator. So we have to press that right arrow key to get it to go out of the fraction. Then we're going to do divided by, and then the same process again. The numerator, the fraction key, and then the denominator. Now, if this is the end of your math problem, you don't have to get that cursor back out of the fraction. But I like to go ahead and do it anyway, just so I keep in the habit of anytime I'm putting a fraction, I'm always getting out of the fraction. Then when we press enter, you'll have 9/10, 9/10. Now, another kind of fraction is something that we call a mixed number. That's where you have a whole number with a fraction piece left over. So let's say I want to do 9 2/3. So I'm going to put my whole number in first, that 9. Then I'm going to press the second key and the fraction key. And see how it created that fraction for me right next to the 9? So then I put my numerator in, I go down, and then I put my denominator in. Now I'm going to keep going with this and make this into a math problem. So I'm going to get out of my fraction, and I'm going to do something like divided by, then my whole number, 5, second key, fraction key, 3/5. And then I press enter, and that will give me 145/84, which is a perfectly right answer, but that's what we call an improper fraction, where the numerator is bigger than the denominator. And your answers might be mixed numbers. So if you need to take this guy and make him look more like this, where you've got a whole number and a fraction left over, you just have one more step. You press the second key, and then you press this button that's the one just to the right of the fraction key. And it kind of looks like alien gibberish. And then you press enter, and that's 1/61/84. So what that's done, that second key and then this button has converted it from an improper fraction into a mixed number. Both of these are right answers, but only one of them will be the format on your test. So you want to make sure you know how to get from here to here. So now that we've talked about a few of the different keys and the different functions of the calculator, let's just do some math problems with the calculator. The first thing we're going to do is use the decimal. So let's say I want to do 15.246 minus 6.82 plus 0.05. So you'll notice each time I want to use a decimal, this is the decimal key down here. Now, in some cultures, the decimal is used interchangeably, like with a comma, and so they might, if you're seeing something up in the thousands or the 100,000s, you might be tempted to want to use the decimal to mark the space. You don't have to. You only use the decimal for the decimal places, for things that are less than 0. And so if you go ahead and put that in your calculator and you press enter, your correct answer should be 8.476. So using the decimal is super easy. You just have to make sure you're entering everything in exactly how it's supposed to be. Let's say we have a question that's asking us, what is 68% of 375? Well, we know that 68% of 375 means 68% times 375. Percent problems are multiplication problems. So what we are going to do is we're actually going to put it in the calculator as a percent. So 68, then we're going to do the second key and then this start parentheses button. See how it created a percent sign? Because remember, anytime you press the second key, you're actually accessing the green stuff above it. So that's our label, 68%. times 375. Then you just press enter. So 68% of 375 is 255. So anytime you have a percent and you just want to put that label on your number, it's just the second key and the start parentheses. So sometimes you're working on a math problem, and let's say you're working in fractions, but you look down at all of your answers and they are in decimals or they're in percents. So the calculator can take care of that too. This back and forth arrow will go back and forth between fractions and decimals or any other format and decimals. And so it can be really helpful. Let's say we're trying to figure out what is 2/7 as a decimal. So you put the fraction in first, then you do this toggle key back and forth, then you press enter, and there it is as a decimal. Let's say you want to know what 2/7 is as a percent. So 2 fraction key 7. This time we're going to press the second key and the close parentheses. Look at how that has a little arrow next to the percent sign. Any of these buttons where you see those back and forth arrows, it's all about going in and out of different formats. So we're going to press the second key and the close parentheses. And look, it's got the arrow and the percent sign up here because we're converting from a fraction into a percent. Then we're going to press enter, and it's 28.57 yada, 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 yada percent. So that's going from a fraction to a decimal or a fraction to a percent. We can also go from a decimal, like 0.25, into a fraction, and that's going to be that back and forth key again. So 0.25, toggle key back and forth, enter, and it's 1/4. So let's say you're working in decimals and all of your answers are in fractions. We'll put it in the calculator and do a conversion. Let the calculator do that work for you. When you're working with exponents with this calculator, it's the easiest thing in the world. It's either going to be the base and then this button, or the base and then this button and then the exponent. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say we want 9 squared, which is the same thing as 9 times 9, right? So 9 and then the x squared key, 9 squared, enter, 81. That makes sense because 9 times 9 is 81. Let's say we want an exponent that's not a 2. That's what this guy's for. So let's say we want to do 4 to the 5th power. So we're going to put our base in first. Then we're going to do this arrow notch key right above the x squared button. And that gives us the space for the exponent to go in. So then we want a 5. Then we press enter, 1024. So if it's a squared, if it's an exponent of 2, there's a shortcut. Any other exponent, we're going to use this one and put the exponent in. One thing you need to think about when you are putting exponents into your calculator is if your base number is a negative number, it needs to go inside parentheses. If you don't put it inside parentheses, your calculator is going to give you the wrong answer. Let me show you what I mean. Let's do -4 squared. Now, if we were doing this by hand, we know -4 squared is -4 times -4. A negative times a negative gives us a positive answer. So the correct answer is 16. But if I put it into the calculator like this, it's actually going to give me a -16, because what the calculator is doing is it's only applying this exponent of 2 to the 4 itself. It's not applying it to the whole -4. So if we want to find out what -4 squared is, we need to use our parentheses to put the -4 inside together. And then we're going to do the x squared button. And that gives us what we want. So anytime you have an exponent and the base, that big number, is a negative number, when you're putting it into the calculator, it needs to be inside parentheses. Roots actually use those same two buttons, but we're going to end up hitting the second key first, because if you look, there's our square root, and there is our root, and that little x signifies any other root power that we want. So let's say we want to do the square root of 961. So we're going to do the second key and the x squared button, 961, and then we press enter, and there it is. Let's say we want the cube root. No, let's say we want the fourth root of 4096. So we're going to start with our root. We want a 4, then the second key and that arrow notch key, and see how all of a sudden it made it tiny. And we're going to do 4096 and then press enter, and it's 8. So if it's just a square root, it's just the second key and the x squared button. But if it's any other kind of root, it's going to be the second key and then that little notch key right above it. We can also use this calculator for scientific notation. So when we're talking about scientific notation, it's something that looks like this, where it has a base number times 10 with an exponent to it. Scientific notation is for numbers that are incredibly large, like distances in space or populations of countries, or for numbers that are incredibly small, things that we can only see with microscopes. And doing that times 10 to the something helps us not have to write out all the zeros that are there. And so your calculator can do it. But if you're going to put something like this into your calculator, well, let's break it up. Let's just do that 3.6 times 10 to the 8th first. So on our calculators, we're going to do 3.6, and then we're going to use this button, times 10 to the 8, and then press enter. So that's what it looks like in what we call standard notation. So scientific notation has that times 10 to the something. Standard notation looks like this. There is nothing wrong with writing this down and then doing the second part, that 2.4 times 10 to the third, and writing it down and then doing division. But it's really slow. And there's a much faster way to do it. And so you can put it in your calculator. You can do parentheses to tell the calculator that this whole scientific notation number is one specific thing. Then we want to get out of the exponent and close our parentheses. Then we're going to do divided by, because remember, every fraction is just a division problem at heart. Then we're going to start a new parentheses, 2.4 times 10 to the third. Then we're going to get out of the exponent and close our parentheses. And so there it is as a standard number. So if your answers are all standard notation, you're done. You just have to make sure you put parentheses around each part of the scientific notation pieces. But if your answers are in scientific notation, your calculator can do something really cool. So we're going to go back into mode. And instead of being in normal, we're going to go over to sci. That's scientific notation. So we're going to go down one and to the right one and press enter. And now look, norm's not highlighted at all. It's just sci. So we're going to press clear, and then we're going to do it again. Same exact format. Parentheses, 3.6, x10 to the nth, 8, right arrow to get out of the exponent, close the parentheses. divided by, start the parentheses, 2.4 x 10 to the, then we're going to do the 3. Then we're going to get out of the exponent, close the parentheses, and press enter. And there it is. It's the same number, but this is what it looks like in scientific notation. And this is what it looks like in standard notation. So depending on what your answers are on the test, you may just want to stay in normal if your answer looks like that. But if your answer is still in scientific notation, then click that mode button and go over to scientific notation. But this is important. Once you're done doing that problem, go back into mode, back down to normal, enter, clear. Because otherwise, all the rest of your calculations you're going to be trying to make are still going to be in scientific notation, and you don't want that. This calculator automatically does the order of operations for us. So you remember sometimes we call the order of operations PEMDAS, where everything inside of parentheses gets done first, and then all of the exponents get done, and then multiplication and division happens as we encounter it from the left to the right, and then addition and subtraction happens as we encounter it from the left to the right. So your calculator will do it for you. So if we would put in 21 divided by 3 times 2 minus 6. Mathematical order of operations tells us that multiplication and division happens before subtraction, and it goes left to right. So in this case, if we were doing this by hand, we would do that 21 divided by 3 first, and that would give us 7. 7 times 2 would give us 14. 14 minus 6 would give us 8. And guess what? The calculator knows how to do that. So on the whole, your calculator is going to know how to do order of operations for you, and it's going to be fine. However, let's say you are doing a story problem and you know that same situation. I'm just going to put the same problem in. 21 divided by 3 times 2 minus 6. But you know that this 2 minus 6 actually needs to happen first. So what you're going to do to force the calculator to do it first, you are going to put that 2 minus 6 inside parentheses. So we're going to go over to the 2. We're going to do the second key and the insert key and do our start parentheses. Then we're going to go all the way back to the end and we're going to close it with parentheses. And that way, our answer is negative 28. So it's very different when we tell the calculator to do something out of order. And we can do that by using the parentheses. One thing you need to think about when you are putting exponents into your calculator is if your base number is a negative number, it needs to go inside parentheses. If you don't put it inside parentheses, your calculator is going to give you the wrong answer. Let me show you what I mean. Let's do negative 4 squared. Now, if we were doing this by hand, we know negative 4 squared is negative 4 times negative 4. A negative times a negative gives us a positive answer. So the correct answer is 16. But if I put it into the calculator like this, it's actually going to give me a negative 16. Because what the calculator is doing is it's only applying this exponent of 2 to the 4 itself. It's not applying it to the whole negative 4. So if we want to find out what negative 4 squared is, we need to use our parentheses to put the negative 4 inside together. And then we're going to do the x squared button. And that gives us what we want. So anytime you have an exponent and the base, that big number, is a negative number, When you're putting it into the calculator, it needs to be inside parentheses.